What if I told you that some of the most powerful AI tools in the world are already being blocked, restricted, or outright banned? Not in some distant sci-fi future, not in a conspiracy threat, right now. And that is the part a lot of people miss. While the internet is busy arguing about which AI is smartest, fastest, cheapest, or most creative, governments, regulators, and major institutions are asking a very different question. Is this thing safe enough to trust? Because once the answer becomes no, or even maybe not, the bans start coming fast. So today, we are looking at 5 AI tools that are being actively banned, restricted, or pushed out of serious environments, and why that matters a lot more than most people realize. Number 1, DeepSeek. DeepSeek came out of nowhere and hit the AI world like a shockwave. It was fast. It was cheap. It was suddenly being compared to giants. And for a moment, it looked like one of those rare tools that could shake up the entire market. But then came the other side of the story. In 2025, Australia issued a mandatory direction requiring government entities to block the use or installation of DeepSeek products, applications, and web services, and to remove existing instances from government systems and devices. That is not vague caution. That is not a polite advisory. That is a real government restriction with real operational consequences. The stated reason was security risk. And once a tool gets hit with that label, everything changes. It stops being just an exciting new AI app. It becomes something ministries, departments, and security teams have to treat like a potential liability. That is what makes this so important. The AI world moves fast, but trust moves slowly, and DeepSeek ran straight into that wall. So even though it gained huge attention almost overnight, in some official environments it is already the kind of tool people are told to remove, not explore. Number 2, ChatGPT. Yes, ChatGPT, the most famous AI tool on the planet, the one that made half the world suddenly care about generative AI, the one millions of people use for homework, coding, emails, summaries, brainstorming, and just messing around. And even that tool has been restricted in serious settings. One clear example came from the UK, where the Department for Work and Pensions updated guidance to stop officials from using public AI applications such as ChatGPT for official business or on government-issued devices. And if you think that sounds extreme, think about what an organization like that actually handles. Sensitive personal data, private records, high-stakes communication, internal processes that absolutely cannot afford sloppy leaks. Now imagine one employee copying the wrong paragraph into a public AI chatbot. That is all it takes. That is why this matters. For everyday users, ChatGPT feels convenient, clever, even harmless. But inside major institutions, convenience is not the standard. Risk is. And once an organization decides the risk is too high, the popularity of the tool does not save it. It gets blocked. That is one of the biggest realities people still underestimate. A tool can dominate the culture and still be treated as unacceptable in places that matter most. Number 3, Replica. Replica is a completely different kind of AI story. It is not mainly about productivity. It is not about office work. It is not about helping you write an email faster. It is about emotional connection, companionship, conversation, a digital presence that tries to feel personal. And that is exactly what made regulators pay attention. Italy moved against Replica over privacy and child safety concerns, and later findings confirmed serious issues involving legal basis for data processing, inadequate privacy information, and weak age verification. That is a heavy combination, because when an AI tool is designed to act like a companion, the stakes change. People open up to it differently. They may share emotionally sensitive material. They may trust it in ways they would never trust a normal app. And if minors can access that environment without proper safeguards, regulators are going to look at it very hard. So Replica became one of the clearest examples of an AI product running straight into the limits of what authorities are willing to tolerate. This is where the conversation stops being about innovation in the abstract. This becomes about vulnerable users, manipulation risk, privacy, consent, and whether the company behind the system actually has control over something that feels deeply personal. That is why Replica is on this list. Not because it was the biggest AI tool, but because it triggered one of the clearest real-world regulatory crackdowns. Number 4. Public AI tools on Indian government devices. This one is important because it shows how the crackdown is expanding from single apps to whole categories. Reporting in 2025 described the Finance Ministry directive in India telling officials not to use AI tools such as ChatGPT and DeepSeek on official devices. Read that again carefully. This is not just one company being singled out. This is the logic of restriction spreading outward. Once governments become worried about staff feeding data into outside AI systems, they stop thinking tool by tool and start thinking structurally. Who runs the model? Where does the data go? What gets stored? Who can inspect it? What happens if confidential material is pasted in? What happens if nobody even realizes it happened? And once those questions become central, bans become much easier to justify. This is a huge shift. Because the first wave of AI hype trained people to think in terms of features. Which bot writes better? Which model is smarter? Which one is cheaper? Which app has the coolest demo? But the second wave is about control. And in the control phase, public AI tools can quickly become unacceptable on official systems, even if they are wildly popular outside them. That is why this example matters so much. It shows the ban story is growing up. It is no longer just about one scandal or one headline. It is about institutions deciding that an approved generative AI as a whole may simply not belong on sensitive devices. Number 5. Claude. Now this one is a little more complicated, but it may be one of the most revealing examples on the list. Claude became the center of a major U.S. government fight after a reported ban effort triggered a legal battle, with Anthropic winning a court order that paused the restriction while the case played out. So this is not the cleanest example of a final settled ban, and it should not be presented that way. But it absolutely matters, because it shows something bigger. Even one of the most advanced AI tools from a major American company can get dragged into national security disputes, procurement conflicts, and direct government action. Think about how wild that is. 1 minute the conversation is about model quality, safety claims, and product features. The next minute it is about whether the federal government should cut the company off entirely. That tells you the AI race is no longer just a tech race. It is a power struggle. A struggle over who controls deployment, who sets the rules, who gets access, who gets frozen out, and who decides what counts as too risky to touch. So even though Claude's case is more legally contested than some of the others here, it still belongs in this conversation because it shows how quickly frontier AI can become a political object. And honestly, that may be the real theme connecting all 5 of these cases. The bans are not just about bad tools. They are not even always about broken tools. Sometimes the tool works extremely well. Sometimes that is exactly the problem. Because once an AI system becomes powerful enough to be used everywhere, people start asking whether it should be used everywhere. In schools, in welfare systems, in ministries, in health environments, in defense, in emotionally vulnerable spaces, on government laptops, on official networks, inside bureaucracies that cannot afford even one major mistake. And that is where the fantasy crashes into reality. The fantasy says the best AI wins. The reality says the most governable AI wins. The safest, the most auditable, the one procurement teams can explain, the one legal teams can live with, the one security teams do not lose sleep over. That is a very different contest. And it is the reason the story is only getting bigger. Because from here on out, every major AI launch has 2 battles to win. First, the public battle. Can it wow people? Can it go viral? Can it feel magical? And second, the institutional battle. Can it survive regulators? Can it survive privacy law? Can it survive security review? Can it survive government scrutiny? Can it survive a world where one bad leak or one bad headline can get it shut out of critical systems? That second battle may matter more. So the next time you hear that some new AI tool is taking over the internet, ask a better question. Is it also getting quietly banned somewhere important? Because that is where the real story often starts. Not in the product demo, not in the launch thread, not in the hype, In the moment a school, a ministry, a regulator, or a government department looks at the tool and says, no, not here. And once that starts happening, the future of that AI tool becomes a lot more complicated than the headlines make it seem. That is why these 5 cases matter. They show us that the AI boom is not just about who can build the smartest machine. It is also about who can build something institutions are still willing to trust when the stakes get real. And right now, that trust is a lot more fragile than people think.